So picture this: Manila Cathedral, February 2025. It's dawn, and the city is still half asleep. A crew of dedicated workers is finishing up the last phase of seismic repairs beneath the cathedral foundations. Rumbling machinery shakes the stained glass above as the morning light filters through dust motes. The lead restorer, Elena Cruz, makes her way through a newly revealed corridor. Until that moment, no one even knew it existed. Then again, the cathedral is old. She assumes it's probably just another disused storage space. That is, until she steps through the threshold and her flashlight lands on rows of ancient crates and shelves that look as though they've stood untouched for almost a century. Her heart pounds. Nobody had been down there in living memory. The air is thick with that dank, archaic scent, like forgotten libraries and damp stone. She runs her palm over a cobwebbed wooden crate. When the dust clears, she sees stenciled letters in Spanish marking it as property of the Arzobispado de Manila. Curious, she pushes a heavy crate aside, revealing a canvas lying face down on the floor, half buried under debris. Gingerly, she lifts it upright, noticing immediately its remarkable size, roughly waist to shoulder in dimension. A strange chill creeps through her when she sees Latin words scrawled in red ink on the back of the frame. She doesn't read Latin, but her eyes lock onto a name she does recognize: Luis Antonio Tagle. That's impossible, she thinks. Cardinal Tagle was born in 1957, and yet here's his name on an old wooden frame that hasn't seen daylight since who knows when. She snaps some photos, her hands shaky, then calls in Father Santiago, the on-site historian. He arrives breathless, trying to maintain his clerical composure, but he practically runs when he hears mention of Tagle's name on a presumably ancient artifact. Father Santiago carefully translates the red ink inscription. In English, it reads, "To be kept until he returns, the one who remembers the mercy before it's spoken." His face drains of color as he reads it. He glances at Elena, speechless. Then they turn the canvas around and peel off a layer of protective cloth. Beneath, it is a painting, rich, vibrant, immaculate, like it's been sealed in a time capsule. The brushstrokes portray a man in a red cardinal's cassock, the detail so precise it practically leaps off the canvas. And the likeness? Unmistakable. It's Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle's face, down to the gentle arch of his eyebrows, the distinctive hairline, even the warm hint of a smile that anyone who's met Tagle would instantly recognize. But this painting is signed in the bottom corner. Fr. Montiel, 1890. So, logically, how could a 19th century painter have captured the visage of a man born in 1957? Skeptics would assume it must be a hoax. But lab tests and later forensics would show the materials used were authentic to the 1890s. No trace of digital manipulation, no modern pigments. It's practically screaming, this is real and also impossible. When Tagle himself, who's away on a retreat, catches wind of this discovery, his first reaction is to laugh it off as an elaborate prank. He finally sees a digital photo of the painting, and his face goes still. Witnesses later recount that he stared at it for a full minute, his expression shifting from puzzlement to a kind of unsettled realization. He simply says, "I need to see it in person before we alert Rome." That's all. But the undercurrent of urgency in his voice says enough. Back in Manila, Tagle arrives at the cathedral's makeshift restoration lab, set up in a side room away from public view. He sits there with Father Santiago and Archbishop Reyes, silently examining the painting under professional lighting. He leans in so closely he could almost smell the dried paint, checking every detail. A small mole near the jaw, the distinctive curve of the nose. "It's not just my likeness," he whispers. "It feels as though the painter knew me." There's a hush in the room, the sort of hush that happens when everyone senses something otherworldly. Then Tagle notices a tiny loose edge in the painting's ironwood frame. He gently pries it back and extracts a brittle piece of parchment folded into the recess. On it, 5 Latin words stand out: "Ad ignomitia," which Father Santiago translates as "in the fire with mercy." That's it. No context, no explanation. Tagle has the room locked. He wants no distractions, no outsiders rummaging around. He confers with Father Santiago to scour the cathedral archives for any record that might link this painting or the mysterious Fr. Montiel to anything in 1890. Working late into the night, they flip through dusty ledgers of art commissions. Eventually, they find it. A March 1890 entry for a commission assigned to Fr. Montiel. The subject line, Portrait of the One Who Will Return. Payment source unknown. The commission notes, not to be displayed, but sealed in cathedral crypt. Another puzzling tidbit is that the commissioner is listed only as confessor in, with no further identification. There's also no mention of who the portrait subject might be. But hey, that's not bizarre enough for these archives, because further down they see two more entries for the same mysterious artist. Study of Fire Around the Lord's Table, 1888, and Figure in Red Standing Over Water, 1885. Again, no subject, no commissioner, no record of payment. It's as though the man was painting privately for some secret patron, and each piece is steeped in cryptic references to time, fire, or water. Digging deeper, Father Santiago finds correspondence from a young priest stationed in Darva, dated 1889, describing a certain Fr. Montiel who had returned to the parish like a man possessed, refusing to eat or sleep, spending hours in prayer. The priest writes that Montiel would paint feverishly through the night, claiming he was recording what was shown, painting the ones already chosen, the ones I have already seen returning. He refused commissions for living people, insisting that anyone he painted was either not yet born or already beyond time. The letter's tone is half terrified, half awestruck. Could Montiel have had visions, glimpses of the future? As if the situation isn't strange enough, later that night, just after Tagle, Father Santiago, and Archbishop Reyes finish locking away the newly found painting, an old man appears at the side chapel entrance, asking to speak to Cardinal Tagle. No one recognizes him. He's not part of the cathedral staff. He claims to be the great-grandson of Fr. Montiel. He says he's been waiting a long time for this discovery. Tagle, though understandably cautious, agrees to meet him. The man carries a weathered tin box, a small carved wooden cross, and a fragile journal wrapped in cloth. With trembling hands, he extends them to Tagle, saying, "These were meant for you, only you." Inside the journal are sketches that make the hair on Tagle's neck stand up, charcoal drawings of faces twisted in anguish, images of a city half submerged in water, a church split down the middle, tongues of fire raining from a sky, and then, repeatedly, Tagle's face. The sketches vary in age. Some are rough, some detailed, but the same visage reappears, labeled with cryptic notes. One drawing in particular reads, "The one who returns will not remember until the wound opens again." The wooden cross in the tin box has a single word burned into its surface, Alala. The old man explains that this is an old Tagalog term meaning memory. He says his ancestor believed memories survive outside of time and return when they're needed. Finally, there's a yellowed envelope with a wax seal from something called the Apostolic Vision Tribunal. The letter inside, dated 1890, is addressed to the cardinal who arrives before the fire. Its first line reads, "When you read this, you will already have seen your own face, though no mirror was near. Do not deny it. You have already returned once before." The second paragraph is all about the fire, insisting it's not literal flame, but something that divides. The one who stands in both years must not choose too soon, it warns. It's enough to give anyone goosebumps. Tagle, unsettled but oddly calm, notices a small slip of paper suddenly fall out of his own breviary. It looks freshly printed, yet the breviary is old and well-used. The slip reads, "You have already stood before the fire, but you did not remember the choice." He's almost certain it wasn't there before. He recalls a strange moment from 2 years prior in Jerusalem, inside the aedicule at the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, when he felt a presence whisper to him, "You've already returned. Will you choose again?" At the time, he dismissed it as a sudden internal prayer or fleeting spiritual insight. Now it seems ominously connected, adding to the layers of strangeness. The next morning, the cathedral bells ring at 5:50 a.m., 10 minutes early, and toll 13 times in a row. Normally, they wouldn't ring until 6 a.m., and the automated system has supposedly been offline during the seismic repairs. The staff is baffled. The caretaker insists the bell mechanism hasn't been touched, let alone reactivated. Yet people across the city hear those 13 chimes echoing through the dawn light. Tagle decides these events are too monumental to handle alone. He requests an audience with the Apostolic Nuncio, Archbishop Dell'Aria, invoking a rarely used canonical clause that allows urgent theological matters to bypass standard bureaucracy. In that meeting, Tagle lays out all the evidence: the painting, the journal, the bizarre inscriptions, the 1890 letter, the Apostolic Vision Tribunal reference. Dell'Aria retrieves a hidden file from a locked cabinet. Yes, apparently the Vatican keeps a secret Vision Tribunal file and confirms the existence of multiple time displacement records. One 1905 report mentions a witness named Sister Agnes who saw a man in red vestments standing over water as fire rained in Lipa, Philippines, holding a cross, while bells rang 13 times. A 1906 follow-up witness report, signed by none other than Fr. Montiel, describes seeing the same red-clad figure at a crossroads between a golden church and a church in smoke. He must not decide too early or too late, the voice said, after which 13 bells rang. The correlations are impossible to ignore. Lipa, fire, a cross, 13 bells. Tagle feels a kind of pull. It's almost like he knows he has to go there, to the ruins of an old Jesuit chapel that burned down in 1912. And so he does, bringing along a trusted companion named Miguel, an old friend who knows how to keep secrets. There, in the overgrown site, Tagle places the Allah cross on the ground where the altar once stood. Almost immediately, the atmosphere changes. Tagle senses a presence, hears a faint hum. Miguel insists he hears nothing, sees nothing, but Tagle swears the air around him hums with a suppressed energy. He starts to dig near the foundation stones, guided by intuition or perhaps something else. He unearths a broken tile carved with Latin words. You must remember the fire. Not all of it is flame. A faint smell of old incense wafts by, and suddenly Tagle's mind floods with fragmented images. A smoky chapel, a younger version of himself holding a red leather book bearing a tribunal insignia, a voice telling him, "You have to choose, the silence or the wound." Then the vision fades as quickly as it arrived. Miguel looks worried. "Are you okay, Eminence?" Tagle nods, but doesn't explain. How could he? He lays a sketch from Montiel's journal over the tile. The lines match perfectly with the ruins layout, but the sketch shows the building as it was in 1890. The vantage point is exactly where Tagle is standing. The implication is profound. Montiel was painting something he could never have physically seen unless he was there at that very spot, in a time overlap. Still seeking answers, Tagle tries to meet with a retired Vatican archivist, Fray Lorenzo Martin, said to be one of the last living experts on the Apostolic Vision Tribunal. They arrange a rendezvous in Madrid. Tagle travels there, only to learn that Martin died unexpectedly the night before. His final words, according to the nurse, were, "He'll know what to do if he waits for silence." Dead end, or maybe not. Tagle returns to Lipa once more, determined to enter the burnt ruins alone. At twilight, he crosses the threshold. The air is different this time, oppressive yet tinged with anticipation. A voice calls his name twice. Tagle remembers the warning from one of the letters. Do not answer the first time. He remains still. On the second call, he closes his eyes, breathing in. Then there's silence, so thick it's like the entire world holds its breath. A third call speaks from within, not an external sound at all. You have remembered enough. Now obey. Something beneath the altar stone glows faintly. Tagle is flooded with a memory, crystal clear now. It's 1890. He's wearing vestments, though he looks younger. He's in this very chapel, but intact, not burned down. He's reading a red-bound tribunal book. The text warns of a future schism in the church, of two paths, one leading to mercy, one leading to division. It says, One must speak the truth of mercy, or the church will wound itself in silence. In that memory, his younger self hesitates, sets the book down, and steps away, effectively choosing silence over speech. Moments later, the chapel catches fire. Whoever he was in that incarnation, fails to deliver the prophecy. And somehow, Tagle in the present realizes that act of disobedience, that fear of speaking out, created an unfinished obedience that needed rectifying. That's why he's returned. At that moment, the bells ring 13 times again, echoing supernaturally through the dilapidated structure. Wind rushes in, swirling dust, and a circle of light appears around the old altar. A figure in red stands in the center of the glow. For a second, Tagle thinks it's another person, but then he sees it's a reflection, a version of himself. It's not threatening or ghostly, more like a living memory. The figure utters a line that resonates in Tagle's mind. One will return, the other will awaken. Only one can choose. Then it vanishes. Tagle sinks to his knees. He finally understands. The painting, the diary, the cryptic warnings, they're marks left behind to guide him to this pivotal moment. He was shown mercy before, but he never proclaimed it. Now, he's being offered a second chance. And the prophecy is not about literal flames. It's about a divisive crisis awaiting the church. The fire is a test that can burn bridges or illuminate the path of mercy. Either way, someone must speak to avert or alleviate the disaster. Tagle's tears hit the dusty floor. All he can say is, "Lord, forgive me for walking away." Digging back into Montiel's journal that evening, Tagle finds a final haunting sketch. Two cardinals, one holding an open book, the other holding his silence, with a locked book on the altar. The inscription, "The voice of the silent and the voice of the one who obeys." He knows what he must do next. He quietly arranges a high-level spiritual convocation at the newly rebuilt basilica in Lippur. Officially, it's for Marian devotion, but the real purpose is deeper. He wants to gather church leaders, bishops, theologians, trusted priests, to share a message the church has never fully heard. Rome grants him the permission, likely because Pope Leo XIV, who is known to be receptive to the movements of the Holy Spirit, senses something important unfolding. The red book Tagle saw in his visions is discovered in the Vatican's suppressed vision archive, an actual, physical item. Its prophecies end abruptly with the line, "He must not walk away again." The words are not his to keep. Tagle realizes this is the exact text he saw himself reading in 1890. It belongs to the Apostolic Vision Tribunal, containing incomplete or unverified prophecies that had never been authorized for public release. Holding it in his hands, Tagle feels time fold in on itself. At the convocation, he stands before the gathered leaders. No cameras, no huge crowds, just a solemn assembly. His voice trembles as he explains the history of this book and how it ties to his experience. He breaks open the final pages and reads out loud. "A time will come when the church will divide not over sin but over truth, and those who love mercy must walk into the fire, not away from it. For the wound will open where silence once reigned, and only the one who speaks will close it." The atmosphere is electric. It feels like the early church councils must have felt weighty, sacred, intense. He continues, quoting the text, "There will be two kinds of shepherds, those who defend doctrine with swords and those who heal wounds with breath. The fire will test both, and the test will not be which one is correct, but which one remembers why the church was born. Not to be correct, but to be Christ." Tagle's voice catches on that last line. Then, in a moment that sends chills through the assembly, the bells of the basilica, wired or not, begin ringing 13 times. For a second, no one moves. Then you can almost feel the collective exhale as everyone kneels in prayer. Tears on some faces, a stunned reverence on others. Tagle, tears glistening in his eyes, whispers, "Lord, I have obeyed. Now let your mercy do the rest." Word of this convocation and its astonishing message leaks out, despite attempts to keep it low profile. Blogs, social media posts, and a few journalists start circulating rumors of a Cardinal Tagle prophecy connected to events of 130 years prior, tying it to some mystical second chance. A few conspiracy theorists run wild with it, while more sober minds in the Church quietly process the revelation's implications. Then comes another bombshell, a leaked 1981 Vatican document signed by Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger, later Pope Benedict XVI, referencing an unnamed cleric in red in the Philippines, someone labeled a returnee. The document warns the Church must prepare for a time when healing is more critical than precision, and that his face will precede his obedience. People start linking it to Tagle. Meanwhile, another letter surfaces from 1890, mirroring the words of Fray Lorenzo Martin's last note. Do not answer the first time. It is not you who returns, it is your obedience. This letter is discovered in a hidden compartment in the Liper altar, dislodged by an aftershock tremor. How could a letter written in 1890 refer to events of 2025 with such accuracy? Historians are stumped, theologians are awestruck, and cynics claim it's all staged. But for many faithful, it resonates deeply. Pope Leo XIV issues a formal statement from the Vatican, acknowledging the remarkable occurrences in Liper. He doesn't fully endorse or deny the supernatural aspect, but he does affirm that God speaks in mysterious ways and that time is but a vessel in his hands. He calls the faithful to reflection, urging them to see these revelations as calls to deeper compassion, not as apocalyptic omens. Back at the Manila Cathedral, Tagle quietly returns to the newly restored corridor. He glances at the original daguerreotype of the 1890 painting, which has since been stored away. Under careful lighting, he notices for the first time a faint second figure in the background, a man in white robes, head bowed, hands raised in blessing. This figure is partially lost in a glare, as though caught in a light source that shouldn't exist. It's almost ghostly, but definitely human-shaped. An internal voice, Tagle's or someone else's, gently says, "You obeyed. The fire was not yours to understand, only to walk through." Tagle experiences a dizzying blur of memory, a scene in the 1890 chapel again, standing beside the younger version of himself who places the red book on the altar. In that vision, the younger Tagle, or whoever he was back then, fades away, leaving only the present Tagle who now knows the prophecy must be spoken. It's as though the timeline has been healed. The leftover regrets have found closure. He slips the daguerreotype under the tabernacle lamp, like offering it as a witness to the living God. Just then, he notices a small carving on the baptismal font. What the fire silenced, the breath restored. He can't help but smile. It's a perfect summation of what's happened. The message once silenced by fear has now been proclaimed. Meanwhile, in the Vatican archives, the old Vision Tribunal case file for the 1890 portrait is reopened and stamped fulfilled April 2025. Pope Leo XIV adds a personal note. Prophecy is sometimes less about predicting the future and more about finishing the past. God returns for what is unfinished, so that mercy might speak. It's a theological statement that sets off lively debates among scholars. But the practical outcome is this. The Church receives a clear call to unity through compassion. Arguments about who's more orthodox or who has the right theological stance seem suddenly less relevant compared to the imperative of mercy and healing. People keep recalling Tagle's line from the prophecy. The Church was not born to be correct, but to be Christ. In the following weeks, the whole world buzzes about these events. Some see them as divine intervention, others as orchestrated stunts, still others as metaphors for a spiritual renewal. Young Catholics and even non-Catholics tune in, drawn by the mysterious vibe of a painting that defies time, a prophecy that literally waited over a century to be spoken. Tagle himself doesn't give interviews to stoke the flames. He quietly continues his pastoral work, celebrating Mass, ministering to the poor, and meeting with church leadership about how to address pressing issues, whether social justice, clerical reform, or evangelization. Yet many notice he carries himself with a newfound gravity, as though a burden he once couldn't name has finally been lifted. In one private talk with seminary students, Tagle addresses the swirling rumors. He simply says, "If I have returned, it's not because of my own merit, but because grace allows second chances. We all have unfinished obediences. The question is, will we speak when mercy calls us to speak, or will we hide in silence?" Some of the seminarians describe the encounter as life-changing, feeling the weight of centuries of prayer in his words. A few weeks later, another curious sign occurs. A battered old bell from the Liper ruins is discovered to have a Latin inscription inside, long covered by soot. Non est tardis, he is not late. Restoration experts say it's likely from the time of the chapel's construction, but no one can explain how the inscription remained hidden for so long. People tie it to the scripture passage about God's timing. It becomes a spiritual refrain. God isn't slow, he's patient. He waits until hearts are ready to do what was once left undone. That's not to say everything is suddenly perfect. There's resistance among some who see all this talk of prophecy and time displacement as superstitious or dangerously mystical. Some corners of the church argue we should stay firmly in systematic theology. Pope Leo XIV, however, gently reminds them that the Holy Spirit has always operated in ways that stretch human understanding. He references biblical precedents, like the resurrected Christ passing through locked doors, or Philip in the book of Acts being transported by the Spirit. Our tradition is full of mysteries we cannot fully grasp, he says in one homily. From a sociological standpoint, people watch enthralled. A leading Catholic cardinal, normally mild-mannered, is at the center of a story that feels more like a fantasy epic than standard church business. The difference is that the fruit of this epic is not sensational doomsday preaching, but a call to deeper compassion. One journalist writes, "If this is a hoax, it's the strangest hoax ever. One that calls us to love more, fear less, and heal wounds rather than inflict them." Slowly, details about that 1981 Ratzinger document surface. Apparently, it referenced multiple returnees throughout church history, individuals who seemed inexplicably foretold in older records and recognized by a matching face or prophecy. Most of these files remain sealed. People speculate. Was Padre Pio one? What about other saints rumored to have bilocated? The church remains tight-lipped, but the consensus among the faithful is that Tagle's case is a rare, if not unique, instance validated by physical evidence. A painting, journal, letters, bells tolling supernaturally. Academics propose a range of theories, from the purely theological, time is irrelevant to God, to the psychological, collective consciousness forging illusions, to the conspiratorial, the Vatican staged everything. But all the debates only highlight that no single explanation can neatly tie up every thread. As for Tagle, he seems content that he's done what was asked. Even so, people close to him sense that he's quietly watchful for other signs or calls. Several bishops who attended the Liper convocation remark on how Tagle's message about two paths resonates with many current ecclesial tensions. Things like how the church responds to moral complexity or whether it remains rigid or open to mercy. Some say it's a timely prophetic statement, pointing out that theology without love becomes a sword that cuts and divides, whereas mercy breathes life into wounded hearts. We're living that prophecy now, they say. How will we use our swords or our breath? In the months following, the Catholic world sees a swell of grassroots movements emphasizing reconciliation, healing services, and interfaith dialogue. A wave of mercy missions springs up around the world, where priests, religious, and lay volunteers focus on listening to the marginalized and the wounded. They cite Tagle's prophecy as inspiration. It's as if the church's desire to be correct has expanded to a greater desire to be Christ-like. Skeptics shrug, saying it's only a fad. Believers say it's the breath of the Spirit. And for Tagle, perhaps the most poignant moment comes one quiet evening back in the Manila Cathedral. He's standing in front of that original painting, newly framed, now kept in a special chapel. Someone took steps to preserve it behind protective glass, ensuring humidity won't degrade its 130-year-old paint. It's the strangest thing, gazing at a centuries-old portrait of yourself. Tagle touches the glass gently, remembering that red ink inscription, to be kept until he returns. He closes his eyes in prayer, gratitude flooding him. He can almost sense Montiel's presence, the mystic painter who captured a moment in time that shouldn't have been possible. He opens his eyes and notices one last curiosity. In the folds of the cardinal's sleeve within the painting, hidden in the shadows of the brushstrokes, there seems to be the faint outline of a cross with the word Allah. It's so subtle he never saw it before. Did Montiel intentionally embed it, or is it just his mind playing tricks? Either way, Tagle breathes the word quietly. Memory. Indeed, it's memory that survived. Memory that bridged centuries to finally speak the mercy that was silenced. He steps away, leaving the painting in the darkness of the chapel, lit only by the flickering votive candles. Outside, the city noises flowed in through the cathedral walls. Tricycles, jeepneys, throngs of people going about their business. The cardinal emerges into the plaza, raising his hand in blessing over a couple of children scampering by. A journalist tries to corner him with questions about the prophecy. Tagle simply smiles and says, "All I can share is that God doesn't forget what we leave unfinished. In his time, he lets us finish it." Night settles over Manila, but a sense of dawning has begun in many hearts. Perhaps that's how genuine mysteries work. They unravel our certainties, only to awaken a deeper hope. And in that hope, the echoes of 13 bells remind everyone that heaven is never too late, that what was once silenced can be restored by a single breath of mercy. From the dusty crypt beneath Manila Cathedral to the altar ruins in Liper, from an ancient ledger to a newly awakened church, the story weaves a tapestry of second chances. People may debate its facts, question its plausibility, or hail it as a miracle. But to those who were there, to the restorer who first found the painting, to the old man who delivered Montiel's journal, and above all to Cardinal Tagle himself, it feels like a gentle hand guiding us back to the essential truth. Love is the final word. When you stand before the fire of division, you either let it consume you or let it refine you for mercy. That's the choice left for us all, a choice that transcends any single lifetime, forging a bridge across centuries. And in that bridge lies God's abiding promise. No silence is forever, and no wound is beyond healing when we finally speak the words entrusted to us.